Games, board games. I might be talking about board games, but I'm not gonna shout. I am starting off this streaming with a little bit of singing. And today, the person with me is the one known as Joseph Kelly. Joseph Kelly has entered two competitions and they have done quite well, hopefully better than their expectations, and they have made games which we'll talk about. And we will talk about their childhood, and we will talk about Joseph Kelly talking to me. Board games and Joseph Kelly. I'm not going to shout. That went off the haywire at the end, but good morning, good afternoon, good whatever it is, wherever you are. It is 10 a.m. UK time, which means it's another episode of Busy Beats and Board Game Blether. And today we are meeting Joseph Kelly, who designed Molly House for the Zenobia Award. You were a finalist. You designed Dwindle. You were the winner of the 2021 LDEC Design Contest. And you're an amazing wordsmith. I mean, just seeing your interactions and seeing what you managed to do with a couple of the one-player word games for the LDEC, I was like, wow, you managed to set world-breaking high score. So thank you for coming on to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Don't know if that's my, if you've got the mute button on your headphones or if I've changed something. But good morning, Ian. It's lovely to see you. I hope that you're generally well.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, cool. Well, okay. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yes, it's lovely to have you. And how would you like to be known in... I mean, this is your way of doing a 30-second pitch for yourself. What kind of human are you? How would you like people to remember you? How would you like people to think of you?
So I'm a musician. I've been doing music for a long time. So that's one of the biggest things that I suppose I've been putting out into the world. But yeah, more recently making games, hoping that those can get out to people and people enjoy those as well. So those are the two main things that I'm interested in. Yeah, I'm not sure what else to say.
Well, that's it. Music, board games, the main sources of your passion, the main way that you express yourself. And obviously there's a lot of stuff, with the human, but I was listening to Carla Kopp talking of Weird Giraffe Games and said, yeah, if you ask in an interview, are you good at communicating on Discord? Everyone's going to say yes. But you need to actually interact with them to see what they're like. So hopefully during the course of this chat, we'll get a little bit more of an idea. But before we do all that, let's talk about some recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights, recent highlights, playing games and other delights, recent highlights. So Ian, Joseph, what have you been up to? First, I'm going to say that personally, I went to my playtest yesterday. We had a good crowd. There were 8 of us. I want to say 7 designers who got games played. One designer had brought a friend along who popped in halfway along, which was lovely because we've got a slot structure. So if you jump in at 11 a.m., 1 p.m. or 3 p.m., you will be able to get into the start of a game. I mean, there's days when we might start a few minutes early, but if we know someone's coming, we'll always wait until those times to start the next game. And so gives us a bit of structure. I personally did rules tests for a couple of games, had some changes for a game where you bled or Scottish Romantic Chocolate, which felt really good. It was going round once. And instead of this build-up, which Mandela had said to me, if I started off with only 12 cards, I would have been trying to spin more of a story. But instead it told me exactly right off the bat what the game was about. And so actually going around just once in the correct manner for the game was a lot stronger. You don't need to ease people in. We played a game about drawing that was unlike most drawing games I've played, because you want to do them as quickly as possible, but it incentivizes you to do drawings in literally about 2 seconds. So the simplest gestures. So thinking, how can I possibly do this? I'd go and quick thinking, quick drawing. Played the 3 dice games by Ellie. I played a kids game by Jolt. And there were also 3 other games that got played that I didn't get to look at, but because I wasn't on those tables. Because obviously when there's more than 4 of you, you might want to split up into 2 tables. But that was definitely the highlight. My friend made a lovely meal and went for a quick walk early night. And I've been writing emails to people about TerraCon, excited for that next weekend. So that's what I've been up to. What have you been up to, Joseph?
Cool. Yeah, I've had a fairly busy week. So I did an interview with Cole Worley on Monday, which is going to be in the San Diego Historical Games Convention, doing like a newsletter.
Oh, wow.
And that's going to be one of the stories in there. So that's exciting.
So is that something you transcribed into the written form?
Yeah, so we spoke, and Chris Bennett was there. He was recording the whole thing, and he's going to transcribe it up. So I think it's going to be out in like May or June. So that should be good. And I played a gig on Wednesday night. Or was it? No, it was Thursday night. At I've lost track of days.
It's all good.
But yeah, that was really nice. Playing some acoustic music with my friend Annie at the Cube, which is.
And what do you play?
So I was playing double bass in that gig.
So double bass, that's the big kind of orchestral instruments that you kind of have to balance on the floor and you go bloom, 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 bloom,
yeah,
bloom.
That's the one.
Yeah. Okay. And a quick hello and good morning to Josie. It's lovely to see you. Nicholas Straccia, who is excited. Joe.
Hi, Nicholas.
And Ian played Cockroach Poker and I Love Sky last night with newbies. That does sound like I've not played I Love Sky yet myself. I mean, that's quite a different weight, though, to Cockroach Poker. I think of Cockroach Poker as almost the simplest bluffing game that can really work. Any simpler than that, and you get present, which is, it's got the benefit that you don't have to lie, but it feels incredibly undramatic to me. I mean, with Cockroach Poker, when you only have to get one more card and then you lose, that is a dramatic moment. There is a wee bit of tension in there. I think it's key for games to have those moments. Shout out for PAX Premier. And is there anything else that you would like to talk about of recent highlights?
No, I think those were the highlights of my week for sure. Yeah.
Okay, well, if anyone out there has any questionably quick questions, that's the next section. It's not an interrogation, it's just the questionably quick question section. But as I said, that's the next section. Because first, while you're writing down your questionably quick questions, let's talk about a brilliant thing. What's a little thing which is brilliant? So let's talk about strings and plucking. And, why is plucking of strings, whether it be guitar or double bass or whatever, why is that something that you've decided to pursue? Why is that more satisfying than pressing a button on a piano?
Good question. I think there's the more immediate vibration. Maybe it's kind of got this instant feedback that a key doesn't quite have. You're like a step removed from the string being struck if you're playing the piano. Although I love the piano too, but that's maybe why it's appealed to me a bit more.
I mean, I definitely feel like the piano is the simplest instrument. You've got all the notes laid out in order. It's not like, okay, there's a few on this string, a few on this string, and you have to, if you want to play these things at the same time, you just need to stretch out your fingers and do that. Feels like the simplest instrument by far, which is probably why, if you want to synthesize and emulate other instruments, you use a keyboard. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not like use the guitar fretboard for synthesizing a piano, but I found that blowing through the trumpets, it also connects you through the thing, and I can definitely get that sense of feeling the vibrations, pulling it, and there's almost more you can do. Would you agree with this? Like, sure, I can press the notes, I can press it with great velocity or less, I can hold it down or not, but when you're not only plucking, but also holding on the other side, you can do a bit of vibrato or whatever.
Yeah, you got so much control over it, especially
Mm-hmm.
on a fretless instrument. You've got the kind of extra ability to slide
Oh,
really
yes.
smoothly. Yeah.
And Ian, oh, there we go. Ian has a bit of a gag. Do you prefer these questions or do you pluck them out of thin air?
Nice one.
Josie, thank you for playing a selection of my games last night and possibly pulled a muscle either from giggling so much or from holding a random yogi position. So, Joe, questionably quick questions. Do you think that the process of creating music taps into the same creativity of board game creation, or do you think that they use completely different creative muscles?
Ooh, that's a very long question, or at least a very long answer, I think. I think they feel quite different. I think I suppose, yeah, with game creation, you're kind of creating this kind of, I suppose, a little prototype to start with, and then testing it out, testing it out, iterating, which you don't really do with songs, I suppose, or music in general. Like you don't kind of make a little song and then play it to 5 people and then see what they thought of it, and then kind of rewrite it based on that. So I think that's the big difference is the interactivity of games, kind of.
Well, you say that, but I kind of do sometimes. I mean,
Really?
when I played music, like not to the same extent as with games, but definitely back in the day when I was in Glasgow, I would play at an open mic night every week, and I would have 2 gigs which I was actually on the books for every month. And when I was at an open mic night, firstly, and I don't know how many people this applies to, but I would always try to get a bit of crowd involvement. I almost felt like, well, if I play something and then people are clapping at the end, it doesn't have the same resonance for me, at least. I don't really know always, are they clapping out of politeness? Are they clapping because they actually enjoyed it? But if I get them to do a call recall kind of thing, like higher, higher, ha ha ha, higher, ha ha ha, these kinds of things, it feels like then people are getting involved, and that kind of thing, it is a lot more like playing a game. But even within non-interactive music that I would perform, I would say that I would do a little bit of improvisation on the keyboard while I was playing, think, oh, which bits are people responding well to, which lines are maybe not going down so well, and I would definitely work on it and mutate the song over the course of maybe half a year or even just a month of doing a few tryouts. Do you not find that when you play a gig afterwards, you think, oh, I'm maybe going to try that little thing?
Yeah, no, sometimes I do. Sometimes I do change stuff based on how it feels in the gig. So yeah, that's a good point. And I think I do a lot of improvised music as well. So
Bez, the Freddie Mercury of open mic nights, says Ian. But yeah, so music and games, very different. I mean, one is more interactive in general. Turnips or radishes?
Radishes.
Or radishes or beetroots? Where would beetroots fall into this thing?
Beetroot over radishes.
Okay. Is it the coloration, the fact that they turn everything red, that just excites you?
That is exciting, yeah.
Okay. Sure. What was the first board game that you can remember ever playing?
It was probably Monopoly, to be honest.
I mean, I would expect nothing less than honesty. It's like that whole thing. I mean, the hidden thing is that when you say to be honest, it feels like you are, correct me if I'm wrong, but a little bit ashamed of it. And I think there is this great shame as a hobby gamer to say, oh yeah, unfortunately, I'm exactly the same as everyone. I did play this big mass market game that sold millions of copies, and there's no shame in that.
Yeah, it's more that it's just like, I think that's going to be a lot of people's answer. So it's just a very standard answer, I suppose. But I think the first game I remember that maybe wouldn't be a game that was quite as kind of widespread was a game. It was called like the Great Balloon Race or something like that. And so it was a roll and move game. So there was this track that these like hot air balloons, like these big plastic hot air balloons, would move on. But at the start of the game, you got a card with 3 different colors on it, and the first player to get those 3 colors of balloons over the finish line would win. So it's like a hidden roll game kind of. So when you rolled, you could decide which balloon you wanted to move. And yeah, that was quite interesting. That was quite an interesting game.
Yeah, not sure if I found the correct game, but I've been doing a tiny bit of digging from 1991.
Yeah, that's the one. That's it.
That's a gorgeous cover.
It was a really pretty game actually. It had these like really cute little hot air balloons, and the board was really nice as well. Yeah.
And yeah, I can see that, and I'm going to try and let's get a few pictures up for people to see. So was this something that you would consider to be a good game? Is it something that you have good memories of but don't particularly want to come back to?
I have good memories of it, but I haven't played it since I was maybe like 7 years old. So I would have to play it again to see if it's actually a good game. But it definitely, yeah, those are the balloons. They were really nice to play with. I remember that much. But yeah, I would be interested to play it again and see what it's like.
Because I know sometimes it's actually, I watched Spaced the other day, and it was like, wow, it's still a great show, but it's not probably in my, I mean, it's still probably in my top 5 shows, but it's definitely not my top 2. Like, before it was like, yeah, this is the best ever thing, and it's weird how some things age horribly. Yeah. And, you know, with Spaced, I think, yeah, there was, I think it was episode 2 of season 1, that lots of things that are said in that feel a little bit problematic. And yeah,
that episode with David Walliams in it feels quite outdated now, I think. I don't know if you know the one I mean. Where he's playing like a performance artist.
Yes, we are talking about the same episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, that episode in particular just felt a bit problematic.
Yeah.
Everything else, most of the things I really enjoyed, but there were just tiny bits that were like, oh, that's not great. Like, do you think that people should do revisions? I mean, where do you stand on the whole? I mean, we've got George Lucas doing revision after revision of Star Wars, but also we've got restoration games doing dramatic changes to Fireball Island or Stop Thief, and we've got people doing tiny tweaks to, second editions or third editions of, I don't know, Twilight's Imperium.
Yeah.
How do you stand on revising things?
Yeah, I think that's a difficult question, and I think it probably depends on the context.
Well, the easy questions are kind of boring.
Yeah. I think. I think the George Lucas doing all of these Star Wars editions feels a bit unnecessary to me, I suppose. Yeah, I think. I guess they lose a bit of their charm in the revisions that he's been doing to that. But I can also see the pros of doing some revisions. So yeah, I suppose if you want to make like the restoration games, if you want to make an old game, I guess more suitable to a modern audience, then I can definitely see the value in doing that too. So, and if people want the old experience, they can, I suppose, track down a version of the original if that's what they really want to seek out. So, yeah, I think it completely depends on why you're doing it and who you're doing it for, I suppose.
That is the key thing. It's very unusual that something is going to be actually taken off. Obviously there have been some episodes of South Park that, because they even mention Muhammad, are not shown anywhere of streaming. But if you got the DVD, you can still watch it.
Yeah.
And even in those instances, and I think that things hopefully tend towards improvements, especially in terms of board games. I think there's no denying that in the past 30 years, so however good Great Balloon Race is, let's be honest, it's probably not as good as a children's game that won the Cannes Festival International de Jeux d'Enfants last year. I don't know if this was like the kind of pinnacle of 1991. It might, let's say it was average, but I believe that an average game from 2022 is probably going to be better as a children's experience, maybe more engaging, more interesting pieces. But then I think that what Restoration Games is doing, personally, I'm all for it. But before we finish up the quick questions, Babylon 5 or Battlestar Galactica, do you have any opinions on sci-fi?
I haven't seen either of them enough to have any opinions. So yeah, sorry about that.
That is totally fair. Well, let's get to the main topic, and feel free to keep commenting, asking questions, and of course the whole fun like follow. But now we'll get into some of the things that I wrote down. Let's start with how you got into game design. So, as a child, were you always creative? Were you always musical?
I wasn't always musical. I think I was always creative in some way. I did actually used to just make games. Like if there was just like a little cardboard box or something had come in, I would like just glue paper on top of it and make little squares on it, and then try and make up a game on it. So that was something that I kind of always did. And yeah, I think I was always like doodling, that kind of thing. But I learnt violin when I was at primary school.
Difficult instrument.
Yeah. And I did really enjoy it. But when I got into secondary school, I think I just I kind of got a bit lazy and couldn't be bothered to bring my violin into school, and so I gave it up, which was a bit of a shame. So yeah, I kind of stopped doing music for a little while, and then I picked it up again when I was sort of maybe 14. I started playing bass guitar. And then
well, that sounds like, even though you had a bit of a gap, I mean, you have been musical most of your life by a great margin.
That is true, actually. Yeah, when you put it like that.
Like here at a festival, I guess.
This was a gig from a couple of weeks ago.
Okay, so is this a costume you made yourself? Is cosplay part of your creativity?
I didn't make the costume. So this is so my partner's partner is a costume maker. So I got him to make me some moth wings. So this is like the grand finale of my act, which is called Wendy Miasma. And there's quite a few costume changes in that. So this is a completely different band. This is from about 10 years ago. This is my band Et Al Shin, which is now defunct. But yeah, we made some interesting music together.
And are you talking like arrhythmic, atonal, weird music that a lot of people get annoyed at, or are you talking more like prog rock or something like Pink Floyd?
It was a little bit proggy. It had some atonal moments, but it was definitely like song based. So
was you do aim to entertain rather than just experiment? I mean, I say just experiments as if to minimize the value of that, but hopefully you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah, the aim is to entertain. Like, I think probably to entertain a fairly niche audience, but still like yeah, so this is me with the double bass. This is a gig. My friend Dan put on a music festival called Toilet Fest, which we did in his bathroom. So he had his drums set up in there.
How many people could possibly watch you performing in a bathroom?
So we had an audience of 2, and the window was open because he was on like a second floor flat, but there was like the roof that people could stand on. So there was maybe 4 or 5 people outside who were watching as well. That was a really cool day. That was a great festival.
Wow! So that's really taking minimalism in a new direction.
Absolutely, yeah.
And by the looks of it, I mean, what's the largest audience you've ever performed to?
So I played at Latitude Festival once. So there was probably a few hundred people there. So nothing like ridiculously huge, but and even then only a few times. Most of my gigs are to maybe 10 to 30 people. So
I mean, can't sniff at. I think that's a weird thing that in this day and age of the internet, we sometimes feel like numbers have to be in the tens or hundreds or thousands to be meaningful, but we sometimes forget the importance of those one-to-one connections.
Yeah, I guess I would rather play to a small audience that's really appreciative and really wants to be watching, I suppose, than a massive audience that's maybe could take it or leave it. So yeah.
So is this a picture of Molly's house?
That is, yes. That's a prototype of Molly House.
So how did he get into game design? We kind of skimmed past that. Where did you think, oh, maybe these games are something that I can engage with, not just from an enjoyment point of view, but also from a inputting, making something myself point of view?
So I think maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, I really started thinking about it.
So it did predate the Zenobia award.
Yeah. So I was working on a game idea, which I think was not actually that great, and I'm kind of glad that I got the Zenobia award to kind of put me on a different path, which I think has led to a better kind of game design. So yeah.
I mean, congratulations and on being a finalist. And for those who aren't aware, could you give a quick 30-second summary? I don't know how many times you've had to do this now, but a quick 30-second summary of what Molly's House is, what that means from a historical context, and what you actually do in the game.
Yeah, okay. So Molly House is a historical board game set in 1720s London. So a Molly House was a kind of meeting place for queer people to meet up, and they would put on parties together, like do big drag balls, masquerades, and they kind of christened each other. They had names that they would use inside the Molly House, and
like pseudonyms.
Yeah, they were called maiden names. So things like Princess Seraphina was one of them, Dip Candle Mary, Orange Deb. They were all quite colourful and kind of tended to relate to either their job or some other aspect of their personality. So the game is about it's a bit of a resource management game. So you're trying to get all the things that you need to put on a party. You've got to work together a little bit in order to do that. But those resources can also be used to bribe the constables. So sodomy was a crime at the time, with the death penalty in place. So one of the things you want to do is avoid getting arrested, because that could end very badly for you. So yeah, that's Molly House in a nutshell.
Yeah, that sounds it's really interesting to explore these facets of history, not just by reading them, not just by watching them. And a quick good morning to Xate, thank you for joining us. And with Molly's House, when it's yeah, why do you think it makes more sense, or why do you think games should be delving into these aspects of history rather than just relegating them to films or books or whatever?
So I think there's something you get from games that you don't necessarily get from other art forms, which is I guess the ability to inhabit the role. So you've got to make decisions that are, I guess, simulating the decisions that people were making at the time. And yeah, I think it's a very different way of experiencing history.
And it does build empathy in that way, because as you say, you are inhabiting that role. So do you think that it's then wrong to ever have the role of an oppressor in a game? I mean, in a lot of LARPs, obviously you can be the baddie, but then it's not, as most LARPs actually abstract away the oppressor when it's too realistic. If it's something that's set in history, then you'll be playing the people who are downtrodden on, because the idea is to get you to empathize with them. Do you think that that's the only I mean, only way is, I don't want to be absolutist, but, in 99% of cases, you know what I mean. Do you think that is the way that we should be going with games?
I think it's a nuanced question, because I don't necessarily think that you shouldn't inhabit these roles in a game. And I think there can be some value in playing that role as well. I think it depends on the game's attitude and approach to how that is played. Because I mean, so I've just bought This Guilty Land by Amabel Holland, which I'm kind of trying to learn at the moment. So that's a game about the politics of slavery in America. So one player is playing as oppression, and one player is playing as justice. So it works hard to make sure that you're not playing the people who were for slavery and the people who were against slavery. You're playing kind of abstract concepts. So it's not forcing you to inhabit the role of the oppressor, but it's allowing you to, I suppose, explore what was happening at the time. And I think the idea of the game is to make you feel uncomfortable as the person who is playing oppression, because obviously the reality around that situation is pretty horrific, and the idea that people were for that position is pretty unthinkable.
Yeah, and I mean, in a sense, playing the role of someone who is doing horrible things, especially if it's in the present day, does allow you to get a better sense of what's going on and shield yourself from these things. When you brought that up, I actually suddenly thought of my own Seize the Power that I'm working on with Tiz, where Am has so many eyes and arms and eye stalks, and for those who don't know, the rules might say anyone with fewer than 6 arms cannot go to school. And all of these rules are controlled by players. So the rules will be applied unless, hey, maybe you can give me a bit of money and then I'll overlook the rule. And then you'll get to go to school even though you're not really meant to. But I'll look the other way. And Am wins the game by stamping down on everyone, making sure that they've got a monopoly on everything, and beating down on everyone. And I know that Tiz, my co-designer, feels very uncomfortable playing Am, actually prefers never to play the best party, whereas Finnemore, it actually goes in alphabetical order, so Finnemore is currently the worst, although we might add more gradients to it. But Finnemore, who's only got 2 eyes, only 2 arms, and no eye stalks, I mean, what kind of ridiculous being would look like that? And they win by enacting revolutions and working with everyone else and trying to get people to rise together and band together so that they stand any chance of actually coming out on top. But even despite that, it is unfairly asymmetric, even more so than Cosmic Power. Cosmic Power?
Encounter?
Cosmic Encounter, thank you. Cosmic Encounter, yeah, I had a slight brain fart there. Cosmic Encounter with the various alien races where, yes, some are clearly better than others, and it's left up to the players to actually beat down on them. Whereas this one, not only they start with more income, they start with more money, more education, and they've got all the eye stalks, so all the rules can actually benefit them. And the best you can do is say, hey, we're not going to enact these things for you as a group, so everyone has to decide to shut them out in order to even have a chance, which, Ian mentions Endeavour does a similar thing where you can use slavery to get an early boost to your economy, but later on the abolitionists make their move and that gets punished. And that's, if it can come out, it cannot come out. And it's definitely a difficult question. So how did you, what was your goal with this game? Were you trying to get people to empathize with these characters, to empathize with their plight? Were you just trying to shed a bit of light on, hey, here's a thing that happened?
I think it was both. Like, I think they're both important. It seemed like most people I've talked to about the game have never heard of Molly Houses before, so I feel like that's an important part of the game, is actually kind of trying to show people that there were queer people like 300 years in the past, and they were leading these kind of actively queer lives in communities, and all of that stuff has been around for a long time. And also, I think empathy is really important in the game, especially, I suppose, to people who aren't maybe queer or trans, to give them, I guess, an insight into that world, what it's like to be marginalized in that way, because I think a lot of the themes in the game still apply today. Yeah.
And that's a minor danger, isn't it? That someone plays this and then feels, oh, well, thank goodness that we aren't in this world. Thank goodness that there's equality, when no, there isn't. I mean, not just in obvious places like Russia, where, you know, people are still persecuted and killed for their sexuality or their gender identity, but even in the UK, even in London, frankly, it's still not always, it still, you know, runs you into problems, let's say, and it is easier to live your life to try and fit a mold in many ways.
Yeah.
How important do you think it is for games to have supplementary materials, whether that's a short essay in the rulebook or an extra bit of paper or extra pamphlets that says, hey, here's the reality. That was the rules, but here's the extra reading if you want it. Or even, like, do you think that's a good thing for a game? Do you think that's an important thing for a game? Or do you feel like the game should stand alone?
I think, yeah, if a game is based on some real world events, then I think it's good to have some kind of supplementary essay, or, you know, even like even maybe a bibliography or something that people can refer to if they want to do further reading about the subject. I mean, I think that shouldn't excuse the game from like not being as rigorous as it can try to be, like, about the situation. But
any game is an abstraction, and I think that it's important to sometimes note, hey, this part didn't quite happen like that, but we aren't able to obviously simulate. Games are simulation sometimes, but they are, I think, they work better when you decide what to focus on and what needs to be simulated. And sometimes the thing that's being simulated is actually the emotional journey. And the details, that's all abstracted away, and sometimes that's the correct route.
Yeah, that's true. And I think with a good historical game, like, the outcome at the end is probably 99% of the time not going to be the actual historical outcome, because you got to give the players agency. Because if you don't give them agency and you get the, I guess, accurate historical outcome, then they haven't played a game. They've just, I guess, experienced some kind of historical story or something like that. So,
and even some of the games that try to make the biggest statement, like, I can't remember their surname, Brenda Romero or Brenda Braithwaite, I think they were going, but Train, I'm specifically thinking of that, where some people don't like it in there, that there's a rug pulled under you moment, which people argue is actually not representative of the true historical fact that Nazis were actually well aware of what they were doing. And for those who aren't aware, and let me see if I've still got my banner about, it's, I mean, we are delving into sad stuff generally, but I'm going to talk about, if you want to kind of mute until this banner goes away or skip ahead 30 seconds. So basically, you're playing a pick up and deliver game. You're sending people on these trains to get to their destinations. You play this super simple game, and then along the way, you realize, oh, one of these destinations is Auschwitz, and the people that have been delivering, hey, wait a minute, they're not willing holiday makers, they're actually prisoners. And the idea is, okay, what do you do at that moment? The idea is, do you continue playing the game? Do you stop out of revulsion? And I think the idea is the notion of being eased into things, and the fact that once we've started things, even when we realize that they are wrong, sometimes we just keep going for the sake of carrying on. And there is definitely some truth in that, in the whole notion of getting your foot in the door. And if you get someone to do a small task and then get them to do a bigger task, it's incredibly horrifying what you can get some people to do. And Ian says that is dark, 100%. And so I know Brenda mentioned that there was a rabbi who said, okay, I've seen this, I don't need to play the game, I've already played it in my mind. Or they didn't say the last part, but Brenda said, you've already played it in your mind. The point being that it's not about even moving the pieces, it's about the thought process. The fact that I can watch a movie, and sure, maybe there's some movies that I'll get more out of if I'm investing my thoughts into, but a game, you have to put thought into moving these pieces around. You have to make the decision. So it's actually forcing you to make the decisions to continue to finish or whatever. What do you think of that before we move on from this game?
I think that's a really interesting example. I guess the context of that game is important, that it's almost kind of more like an art piece or something like that. Like it's not a
mass-produced thing. It was taken to museums and it was played by people as an interactive piece within museums. Yes.
I think I can't remember who it was, but I heard someone talking about it recently and saying like it was definitely interesting, like the time that it was produced. Maybe there wasn't as much discussion about like potential triggers for people or like consent in games, that kind of thing. And the idea of the rug pull might not, I guess, be as acceptable now as it was then. And I think that's maybe something that games now might try to do more. Like I know it's a big thing in like tabletop role-playing games, for instance, ideas of consent and like people being able to opt out of things and X cards, that kind of thing.
And I think that's a good discussion, and I can take away the banner at this point. So I think this is a really good point about consent, and that when you advertise your game, no matter what is a good game to you? Let me ask you that question before we come back to this topic of consent.
What is a good game?
Because I mean, it looks like, while you ponder that, to me, I have this vague notion that's a good game. Obviously, it's contextual on the people playing it, what they want. So to my mind, a good game is basically something that advertises what it's going to deliver. It tells you what experience it's going to deliver, and then it delivers that experience. I know that's a bit vague, but I think for me, that's the critical thing of what a game what any medium should do. That sure, there should be minor surprises along the way. It's not interesting if there aren't, but I think that I don't think it's good to make a romantic comedy where suddenly, you know, the people decide that they're not right for each other, and then that's the end. You know, there is no final. Oh wait, we were right all along. Hey, we get back together. It's just you know what? Nah, there'll be other people, and then that's the end. I mean, it's that. And so, if people are wanting to see a romantic comedy, they see it with a specific purpose. People should be able to choose their entertainment to say, hey, I am in the mood for something that's going to make me feel happy, or something that's going to reaffirm my faith in humanity, or something that's going to make me, now I'm ready to feel about a darker theme, and I'm okay with that. But I feel like that is super important.
Yeah. I think that's definitely important, and I think that's something that people are a bit more aware of maybe these days. And yeah, I mean, I haven't really seen it very much in board games, but I wonder if there will be more like, I guess, content notices, that kind of thing, on especially like more games that are exploring more difficult topics, or even games that explore like, or games that are themed around colonialism that don't really explore it as much, like Puerto Rico, for example, is the
That
big
is the
one.
classic example, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah,
Puerto Rico, which from a pure mechanical perspective, it's a brilliant game because they follow the leader mechanism, and there's so much really nice design work in all the
yeah,
buildings and everything from a pure abstract point of view. But then when you think about, yeah, actually, we are all benefiting from slavery, and it's not like the game ever challenges that at any moment. It just
yeah.
takes it as written that this is what people were doing, and that's, I mean, it reports it, and sure, there's the argument that, hey, this is what history is, but there is also the argument that by presenting it without commentary, you are kind of tacitly approving it. I don't know where you stand on that argument.
So I saw a really interesting take on it on Shelf Stories. I don't know if you're,
Mm-mm-mm.
yeah.
Jason,
Yes, Jason Perez.
yes, I think that's the one.
Yes. So he was talking about Puerto Rico because he's Puerto Rican. So I think that's very close to his heart. But I think one of the things that he was talking about was like, it kind of erases the agency of those people as well, because there were like slave revolts as well, slaves like refusing to work, that kind of thing, and that's not like depicted in the game at all. So yeah, it'll be, I guess, yeah, it's kind of purporting to be historical, but also kind of not really showing that side of what was happening in history.
I don't know if you can call Puerto Rico a historical game any more than you can call Notre Dame a historical game. I feel like Martin Wallace actually with Tinner's Trail, that is a mechanism that for me, the each time you spend resources equal to the water cubes, because each time you go mining there's more water seeping in, and these mines are flooding and you need to spend more resources to get it out. That simulates history perfectly in a very elegant way, and that's beautiful. But still, it's even there, like Martin Wallace's games tend not to be commentary on history as much as they have the trappings of history, and I wouldn't say
Yeah,
they use it for a theme in a literary sense. They use it for a setting, and it's a very strong setting, don't get me wrong, and there's a lot of like the way that most people use the word theme in board games, there is a strong connect between the mechanisms and what happened in history, but there's never any commentary, there's never any sense of, okay, this was what people were struggling with. There's never any aspiration to give you the emotional journey that these people were really having. At least that's how
yeah,
I believe that, and I've not asked that question directly of Martin, but yeah, after a couple of conversations, that's how I broadly feel they probably would agree, that it's using these as, hey, here's something that people are interested in, people are going to like these games, and it is primarily for entertainment value. And
Yeah.
that's the key thing, like games as entertainment, I think it's super awesome. And I love games as entertainment, but when it's games as exploration of grief with holding on. And I think this is a key thing that the Zenobia Awards are really pushing for and hopefully will continue to push for, which is games that are exploring not just using the history as a setting, but actually exploring these.
Yeah. I guess we wouldn't be having this conversation if Puerto Rico was kind of based on some kind of fantasy setting, I suppose, or like.
Well, we would have had exactly the same conversation, except without bringing up Puerto Rico.
Yeah, potentially.
I mean, I don't know if you mean that Puerto Rico, by being problematic, engendered our conversation, but if that's your point, I'm going to disagree.
I guess I mean, like, we wouldn't be using it as an example.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, no, you're right. There's countless games that do the same thing. So yeah.
Ian says no one talks about the skulls being placed on children. Itza in Solkin. It's been a long time since I've played Solkin, but I can believe that there would be a lot of problematic things in there as well. It feels like this is a really interesting conversation, but we are basically coming up to the end of the hour, and I do want to, while I do have a quick stretch for the sake of, hey, let's keep our health and not just sit down for an hour and a bit straight, let's finish up by talking hopefully a wee bit about competitions, word games, and other things. So this picture here looks like Dwindle.
Yes.
And yeah, I assume you just took this photo for the sake of setting up a shot, because when I saw this, I was like, oh, I can straight away see better words.
Yeah. This was an example that I took for the rules. So yeah, Dwindle was the game that I entered into the LDEC competition, and won this year. So yeah, I love word games, and I love the LDEC. I think it's great.
Would you like to talk about usable here? I mean, you have done. Yeah, I'm gobsmacked that you. So, for those who don't know, this is a one-player game that I designed, and Joseph, the hard mode wasn't enough for them, so they decided to go on a super hard mode. 5 turns, you need to make 5 words. You take 12 cards, try to make a word. 12 cards, try to make a word. Do it 4 times, and then once you've gone through all 48 cards, any cards that you did not make a word with, you try to use in one final word. And that's basically the entire rules of the game. Now I say it's like, that's quite a simple game. I'm quite proud of that. But that is like really tricky what you've managed to do there. And your score it's like golf. You're trying to get the lowest score, and the number of cards remaining is your score. So you got a perfect score on the 12 card super hard version.
Yeah, I got a bit obsessed with that game. I was playing it quite a lot. I guess it was lockdown, so there was lots of time on my own, which I decided to spend playing Usabel, which is a great game in my opinion. This did take me quite a while to come up with, but I really love making words. I'm really into cryptic crosswords as well, so that's that's another passion of mine.
And yeah, so is this your prototype that you're working on right now?
Yeah, so this is a different game I'm working on. So it's a game about an alien dating app. So the players are playing as formless aliens who need to match with. So their spaceship can only move if they get matches on a dating app. So you have to kind of collect all of these resources to make the images that the aliens on the app are looking for, so that you can match with them.
Okay, wow, that sounds like a very far out concept.
Yeah. So it's a bit like, do you know Century Spice Road?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So it kind of works like that, in that you've got these cards that do actions which convert or create the resources. Fimpton's a good one, Nicholas. Yeah.
Formless aliens seeking similar good sense of humor.
Exactly. That's the game. So it's a kind of programming game. So you have a hand of cards with these, like, so you can see that go east. It's changed a bit since this prototype, but you're programming movement on this grid that's in the middle, which has all the actions on it. And then you move around. You take the actions that you move on to kind of create the matches that you need to win.
The thing is that if you hadn't told me it was about formless aliens making themselves pretty to add on to make themselves appealing to dating apps, I wouldn't be as excited to play it. And it kind of shows like the idea of an amusing story, an amusing premise, something that's a bit ridiculous and out there. And what have you got here?
So that's Molly House. This is a digital prototype that, because the Zenobia Award was a global thing. I was doing a lot of showing it to people in America. So yeah, this is a more up-to-date version of the game. Yeah, I just thought I would show what it looked like on there.
Let's talk about contests and competitions in general. So you entered more than one game, so to the LDEC contest, and you've entered Zenobia Awards, you've done quite well. What inspires you to enter a contest? And do you have any encouragement or any pearls of wisdom for other people thinking about doing it?
So I entered the Zenobia Award first, and it's quite a different process because you were assigned a mentor as part of the awards process, and you didn't enter a prototype. You just did an application which said, like, this is the topic I want to explore. This is my ideas about it. I got assigned Cole Worley, which was an amazing get, I suppose. And yeah, he gave me some really good advice. Showed him an early prototype of it, and he's been really helpful, I suppose, in trying to find like what kind of game I was making with it.
Yeah, having someone to discuss all those ideas so you can get them out of your head and guide you through that process. And that sounds fantastic, to have someone with that amount of expertise. And with my contest, I mean, the idea is really, hey, you can come with a fully finished game. If your game is a bit less done, it's more... I think that's ultimately my ambition is the same as the Zenobia Awards, which is to encourage creation of a particular kind of game. They're trying to encourage more people to make historically relevant games that deal with aspects of history that aren't being explored. I'm doing something a bit more selfish and a bit more insular, which is to encourage people to make more games for the L deck, so that for the foreseeable future and hopefully forever, even after I pass away, if I can sort of get other people to run it somehow, it would be nice to say, yes, every year there is going to be one new highlighted game on the 1st of August to say, this is a great game and it's might have been available for a while. I mean, if you want to play Dwindle, you can now go to stuffbybez.com/ELL and the rules are there. But at this point, it feels like the only thing left to do is work out exactly what is good / brilliant. Work out, because I think that any solo game, unless it's super skill pinball, which, yes, it makes, again, thematic sense, it doesn't. Pinball tables don't have high score tables that you actually compete on. You compete against your own high score or against other people, and that sense of discovery, hey, what is a good score on this table, is part of the appeal of pinball, I think. Whereas I think that most people coming to a words game, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that there's some satisfaction from saying, yes, I got the absolute perfect game. There is no way to improve. Or, hey, I was brilliant. I was 2 away from being the best level, and so now I've got an idea that I did quite well. I mean, how do you feel about those sorts of rankings in beat your own high score games?
Yeah, I think super skill pinball gets away with it because people have the context of a pinball machine. They know how that works. Whereas I suppose with a word game, yeah, you could play it the first time, get a score, be like, well, I don't know what that means, and I guess it's good to have something to compare your score to without the context of a real life analog. So I do think that's a good thing to have in that kind of game.
Is there any, like, some of the things are still forthcoming and it hasn't, finished fully at this point, but what are your thoughts on the contest? And you can criticize it. I accept that there's been some issues with the way that the contest has run. And do you have any feedback for me?
No, I mean, I've had a pretty good experience, I think. I mean, yeah, it was great to see, because you play tested them on stream, so it was good to see like people who hadn't seen the game before playing it and get that feedback without it being like someone having to tell me what they think of it. So that was really useful. And I really I think you did a great like development work on Dwindle as well. Like the first version of it was all right. I think like it was like a strong concept that didn't have the right end goal, I suppose, which it now does, and I think it feels like a complete game to me now.
Yeah, so just for context, the original version of the game, it was, I think, you play 5 turns, and then again, golf scoring, lowest score, the better, the number of points you've got in your hand, and the values of these cards, the better. And when you're playing the game, it was a really interesting concept which used the L deck cards very well for their purpose. I mean, it's hard to get to scoring that works well for L deck cards because most people are inspired to say, well, the higher the value, the better, and that's not.
Yeah.
That makes the better words easier to make, which is completely wrong. Whereas here, yes, flipping it's on its head, but then using the design technology of saying, okay, if you use the lower letter, then you get a new card that's one lower. If you use the higher letter, you get a card that's the same value. If you don't use a card at all, you get a card that's one higher. And that, I was concerned about that aspect because that's the key thing that permeates through the game. That's the key thing. Like, how understandable would this be? And it's not a mass market game. It's not super simple, but most people that I've played it with who have some understanding of games, been like, Chris is not a big gamer. Like, I probably play more games in a year than Chris has ever played. But it's but obviously working for me and being friends with me, we have quite often played a good like 2 or 3 games a week. Maybe like we've played hundreds of games together at this point, literally. So I mean, but again, that's the issue. Like, it's hard to get the analysis of someone who's outside of that field. But basically, anyone who's listening to this show, anyone who's actually into word games, who's willing to overcome that obstacle. And then what we found was that actually moving from play a set number of turns, see what your score is, and it was David Brain who actually suggested, oh, what if you were trying to get down to 3 cards? And if you're trying to get down to a set number of cards, then that actually adds some strategy, because now you don't just want to reduce everything. If you've got 3 5s, well, you can just ignore them for the entire rest of the game, because you can keep 3 things, and it might even be better for you to have them as 4s rather than 2s, because the 4s might have simpler letters that you can use for the other things, because it's all about getting things down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then getting rid of the card. Because if you use the lower letter on a 1, and that kind of feels like a pinnacle, because that's always the trickiest letter to use. It forces you to have used the P, the Y, the F in order to get it down to the 1, and then the Z, X, V, J, K, or Q to get rid of it. And some of those letters are easier than others. I mean, ironically, X is actually really easy to get rid of. As Scrabble players will tell you, any vowel you can get rid of an X. But if you do that, and it's not towards the end of the game, you've got lots of other things that might go up, but it's still probably worth doing. And then that gave birth to, well, we can do other setups. And we tried what I thought was a good setup, and then doing a bit more playtesting, finding that, hey, obviously Joseph is really, really good at word games. Just for context, when the L deck does like word games 3 times a week and the creativity game, but like with the word games, if there is an 8-letter word to be found, I kind of expect Alex and Joseph to find them. And it's
sometimes it takes like I think I have to think about it all day, but I do get there.
Bye for now, Ian. Lovely. Thank you for being here. But yes, that then gave rise to, hey, we can start with different numbers of cards. And I think I did try to work out, with your help, of course, and there was a lot of passing back and forth of information, of which I tried to do a better job each year. But the other sad fact is that there is going to be, for some people, less information than others. For some people, it will be like, okay, I went through this month and then I playtested a couple more times and it has these issues, and that's it. But I do want to get to a state where it's like, set up a proper Calendly or something where, if you want to chat about your other games, then let's do it, because I appreciate the value, irrespective of what skills I may or may not have. It's always good to have that second opinion, and hopefully I've got some, amounts of expertise, even if it comes to a lot more strategic games. But yes, I was super excited with Dwindle, because it was actually just after I'd played the epic mode a few times and then had someone else play it for the first time, which was David Brain, who was like, wow, and David was clearly enjoying it a lot and played it through our break during the playtest day, because we do schedule in breaks. And I was like, well, if you want to carry on playing it during the break, but I am aware that you don't have to play it for me. And David was, no, you know what? And so that's obviously a good sign. But yeah, then I went home listening to Tabletop Games blog with podcast with Oliver and Antoinette Mason, where they were saying, "Oh, word games. We've done short word games, we've done medium word games, but a word game that's epic, more than 60 minutes. We can't think of like any, like, I think they were saying 90 minutes or something. We can't think if there's anything actually that exists, and if there is, then please let us know." So I'm looking forward to seeing Oliver and saying, "Hey, check this out. It's an epic one-player word game." And I do feel like epic is actually quite epic because it's, well, I play it very quickly and generally not as well as, I will play it in half the time of David but get double the score, and double the score is bad, but David will play it in double the time of me but get half the score, actually thinking about each word a lot more carefully.
Yeah, to get a good score in that game, you've got to put a lot of time into it. There's so many options.
Before we finish, word games, why are they valuable? Why are they worth making? Why are you attracted to them?
I don't know if I have a good answer to that, except that I just really enjoy them. I think it's different to the historical games where it's like, oh, it's, really feels really valuable and important to, and educational and all of this stuff. Like I think I just like playing around with words. It just makes me happy. That's why I like them.
That is totally fair, and enjoyment is a noble goal to go for. So it has been a lovely chat, and I would love to have you back on again, maybe to talk more about some of these topics that we talked about. Indeed, if you want to talk more about word games or your things, or if you want to talk more about the notion of colonialism and how we can, when is it right to have people in those, in the role of the aggressor, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Because that is a difficult question. And so
absolutely.
it has been lovely having you on. And before we go, I'm going to keep it relatively light and ask a question of the day. Question of the day, a little question before we go on our way. So the question of the day is going to be, what was the last word game that you played? And for me, I don't know if this counts as a word game, but a game where you bladder is Scottish or meaning to talk at a fast rate without necessarily making for much sense, using as many words cards as possible as you spout a stream of consciousness, keeping those cards you used and discarding those you did not before 7 cards are distributed by each other player to denote the relative merits of those bladders, finishing with a final bladder off. Mainly designed. Anyway, I'm not going to say the full title. That is the game with the. I specifically made it to have a super long title. Words cards. You get the sense of the game by me saying that portion of the rule, the name, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, would you call that a word game? Because when people say word game, quite often they talk about constructing words. If that counts, I would say that one.
Yeah, I think that counts. Yeah.
Cool. What was the latest word game you played?
I think it was Extendable.
Oh.
Yeah.
How did you do?
So I think I got 7-letter word, and I used all the cards. So
that's pretty good.
So that's 7 times 24.
Yeah, 140.
168.
20. Yes, 168. You got there a little bit faster than me. And Nicholas says, the name of my game is kind of like reciting pi, except that it's still a work in progress. I mean, the name of the game and also the game. But I think
it feels like all of the rules are like in the title, so they're kind of the same thing.
Not all of the rules. It doesn't tell you how many cards you start with.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
Maybe it should. That's a good idea. Yeah, or yeah, I don't know. I'll have to think about this. But yes, I am feeling. A lot of people a couple of years ago were asking me when will this game be made, and I was like, well, it's 350 bits of art. I don't know when I'll be able to do that, and I am feeling, after this year of making a new busy bargain bag for every convention I go to, which is my objective for this year, so I'm going to be making about 7-ish new games. But yeah, Nicholas says the more you calculate it, the longer it gets. But even the early bits of my game's name are still being changed. But yes, what was the latest word game that you played that you can remember? If you're watching or you're hearing after the fact, feel free to share. But in any case, over to you. What are you up to? You can share, but only if you want to. Whether it's fun and frivolous, super serious, something that you share, I promise that we care. I am going to be messaging a bunch of people for Aircon. I'm going to be putting up a questionnaire for people who are helping me to establish their comfort levels for different games and to make sure that I kind of allocate games, properly. Because, if someone really likes making noises, then maybe they should be making noises the majority of the weekend with a game about whimsical creatures and trying to identify them after someone makes noises. Whereas, I want to make sure that people are playing things that they feel comfortable about and that they feel good about, although I do want people to do at least a couple of things each. I'm hopefully going for a wee bit of a walk with a friend, and that's the highlights. What are you planning for today, Joseph?
I'm probably going to go back to learning. Oh, my brain's gone. The Amabel Holland game.
Oh yes, with liberty and oppression.
Yes, the title has completely escaped my mind, but yeah, that's my plan for today. Gonna chill out. Gonna take it easy today. That's my plan.
Sounds like a good day. Nicholas recently did Dordle, the Wordle spin-off with 2 words.
Dordle definitely counts.
Definitely counts. Have you played Quordle or Octordle?
Yes. This guilty land, thanks, Nicholas. Yes. I have tried them both. I think I couldn't keep all of the information in my head because I had to scroll down on my phone screen. So I haven't successfully done a Noctordle.
I'm surprised.
Yeah,
try it on your laptop or desktop.
Yeah, maybe I should do that. Yeah, I'll give it a go.
I really like it because what I find is that Wordle, you expect to get it. And people are like, hooray, I managed to get it in 3 out of 6. And at a certain point, it's like it's more about the luck than. Whereas Octordle, I feel, okay, you know that you've got up to 5 guesses where you don't find a word. After that, because you've got 13 guesses and there's 8 words to guess. So that means that you've got to get it correct 8 times. So what you really want to be thinking is, okay, not even with the first 2 guesses, like how am I going to use all the best letters in the alphabet? So with Wordle, I might go alien and then roused, because that feels like a pretty good starting thing. I've got all the vowels, but then with that, I'm now thinking, okay, what's 3 words that to split up the vowels a bit more evenly, get a few more consonants in there, see what's going on. And so once I've got the third, I'll look at the word, see, okay, which one can I get towards? And hopefully progress with 1 word will get me closer to another word. And then if you actually manage to get it, it's like, okay, I get it. And it's like that interesting bit of computation. And so you get to do that like 8 times in a row, which I find really fun. Also, I'm a fan of Nerdle just because of the number 1 with the computation there. Josie says that their most recent word game was Categorical, which is really interesting getting into what's a word game, because when I think about, in my mind, about making sure there's variety in LDEC games, I kind of think of I kind of subdivide it into word construction games and games that use language, like they're still word games, and games that aren't about words at all, like Grabble and Alphabetical are the only two, and Puzzle. But yes, categorical, it's all about recall, it's all about saying things that are foods and absolutely recalling those things. Nicholas says, I started beginning with irate, block, and mushy.
Interesting.
That feels like a good set of words. What do you think?
Yeah, it sounds good. So yeah, you've got all the vowels.
They're all unique letters. There's 15 unique letters there, which is the key thing. That's like level 1. Yeah, and you've got the Y, which
you don't have an N though.
Like it's the senior. Someone pointed out it's the senorita thing, like the top letters on the L deck. But
was it Etawin Shridlu the way that? Do you know about Etawin Shridlu?
No.
So I think it was supposed to be the most common letters used in the English language, and people would use it in like typesetting when it was still done with like blocks. Yeah. Apparently those are the most common letters in order, but this is
I mean, presumably you could change block to clonk. I'm wondering, is clonk a word?
In the list?
Let me actually open up Wordle right now, because Wordle CLONK. Yep, clonk is in the word list.
Clonk, okay.
And yeah, but I'm not going to tell you which one it had because I know some people don't like Wordle spoilers, but it is definitely in the word list.
Interesting. Okay.
And so yeah, if you want to, but so then that way you don't get a B. But B is really easy to put into other words, I think. Whereas C can be tricky, yeah, to get on its own without a K or an H.
Yeah.
So I think having a C in your opening words is actually really strong. But anyway, we have talked about quite a lot. Recap and wrap up before we finish up. So we talked about music. We talked about playing the double bass. We talked about interviewing Cole Verley. We talked about doing gigs. We talked about doing gigs in toilets. We talked about the beetroots being the best thing. We talked about the Great Balloon Race from 1991. We talked about space and, yeah, some bits of it being problematic. And we talked about revisions, maybe Star Wars being, what's the point? But, you know, restoration games doing good stuff. We talked about being creative as a child, doing collage, doing doodling, doing music before moving away from it, coming back, having done the violin, coming back and doing other instruments in secondary school. We talked about Molly's House. We talked about why history is important, to that games can be more than just entertainment, but both entertainment and education and empathy, and just saying, hey, this is a thing that happened. All of that has value. It's not to say that pure entertainment games have less value or anything like that. We talked about Train. We talked about some dark themes that Brenda's been putting into games. We talked about the notion of consent. We didn't really explore that. That could come on a later thing, but definitely this has been something, as mentioned, with X cards, in tabletop RPGs, even in LARP, it's a big deal to say, hey, what's going on? We talked about Puerto Rico, and then we finished up going back to word games, talking about contest, talking about Usable and Dwindle, and congratulations, Joseph, for winning the 2021 LDEC contest once again. If you want to check me out, I am Stuff by Bez everywhere. So twitter.com/StuffByBez, Instagram.com/StuffByBez. I'm most active on Twitter, I would say. Twitch, I'm streaming every day at 10 a.m. UK time, same as YouTube. But YouTube, after the fact, you get the double speed and all that stuff, and it stays up there a bit longer. Discord, join my Discord, stuffbybez.com/Discord. If you want to find out what I'm streaming about, I'm stuffbybez.com/streams. And tomorrow I am doing a cooking show where I am going to be cooking something that involves beetroot and possibly radishes. It depends whether I can get radishes at the Sainsbury's. On Monday, I don't know. On Tuesday, continuing the conversation with Jessica Medringham about Kickstarter information curation. Wednesday, I will have Alan Paul on to talk about preparation for Aircon. And Thursday, I'll be about to go to Aircon. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'll be at Aircon. So I'll do my show live from Aircon. It'll be a very short show. It might be like 5 minutes long, but you'll get to see a snippet of Aircon. So if that sounds interesting to you, probably, check it out. And then I'll be back in a wee bit. But I hope you have a wonderful time. And if you want to check out Joseph, then the main way to do that is on Twitter. Where do you like to be found?
Twitter's good. If you want to send me a message or whatever way you want to contact me on Twitter, that's cool with me.
And so, as always, I like to say, share, spread the word. If you feel like this has been interesting, like you feel the future streams are going to be interesting, invite people to join in the conversation. I love having people, even if whether I see their face or whether it's someone in chat kind of just proposing questions. And thank you everyone for being along. Most importantly, thank you Joseph Kelly for being here. Thank you Nicholas, Josie, and Ian and Xate and just everyone who's been around. And for now, lots of love. Have a wonderful day. And do you only thing left to say unless you've got any final words?
No, well, thanks for having me. It's been great.
Well, for now, bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.